The shuttle was falling apart around him. Han Wu gripped the emergency handles as the small research vessel shook and screamed through the atmosphere. Red warning lights filled the cabin. The computer voice kept repeating the same words over and over. Impact in 30 seconds. Brace for collision. He had been on a simple mission. Collect soil samples from the outer moons. Return to the main ship. Write his report. Go to sleep. But the pirates had other plans. They came out of nowhere, 3 fast attack ships that tore through his shuttle's engines before he could even send a distress signal. Now he was crashing onto Helios 4, a barren moon that nobody cared about. A moon with no stations, no colonies, no rescue teams waiting to help. The ground came up fast. Wu closed his eyes and held his breath. The crash was violent. Metal bent and glass shattered. His body was thrown against the straps so hard that he thought his bones would break. But then everything stopped. The shuttle groaned and settled into the rocky ground, and there was silence. Wu opened his eyes slowly. He was alive. His hands were shaking as he checked his body for injuries. Some cuts on his arms, a bruise forming on his chest, but nothing was broken. He could move. He released the straps and fell forward onto his hands and knees. The cabin was filled with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. He crawled toward the emergency hatch and pushed it open. Cold air rushed in, and he pulled himself outside. The moon was gray and empty. Rocks stretched in every direction under a dark purple sky. 2 distant suns hung low on the horizon, giving weak light that made everything look like a shadow. There was no sound except the wind. Wu stood up and looked at his shuttle. The back half was completely destroyed. The communication array was gone, torn away during the crash. His emergency beacon might still work, but it would take days or weeks for anyone to find him out here, if anyone came at all. He was alone. For a long moment he just stood there, letting that truth sink into his chest. Then he took a deep breath and started to think. He needed shelter. He needed water. He needed to survive long enough to be rescued. He spent the next hour pulling supplies from the wreckage. Of 3 days of food rations, a small plasma cutter that could be used as a weapon, a thermal blanket. It was not much, but it was something. The wind was getting colder. Wu looked around and saw a line of cliffs in the distance. Where there were cliffs, there might be caves. Caves meant shelter from the wind and the cold nights that would come. He started walking. The ground was rough and uneven. Every step required effort. His boots crunched against the gray rocks as he made his way toward the cliffs. The suns moved slowly across the sky, and the temperature kept dropping. By the time he reached the cliffs, his legs were tired and his breath came out in small white clouds. He found an opening in the rock face, a dark cave that seemed to go deep into the mountain. He turned on his small flashlight and stepped inside. The cave was large, much larger than he expected. The walls rose high above him and disappeared into darkness. His footsteps echoed as he walked deeper, looking for a good place to make camp. That was when he saw the marks. Long scratches ran along the cave walls, deep gouges in the stone made by something with very large claws. Wu stopped and studied them. These marks were not old, they were fresh. Something lived here. His hand moved to the plasma cutter at his belt. He should leave. He should find another cave, another place to hide. But the cold outside was dangerous, and this cave was the only shelter he had found. Then he felt it, a vibration in the ground, footsteps, heavy footsteps coming from deeper in the cave. Wu turned around slowly. She emerged from the shadows like a nightmare-given form, over 3 meters tall, with skin like black armor plates that covered her entire body. 4 arms, each one ending in claws that could tear through metal. Her eyes glowed with soft violet light in the darkness, and when she moved, every step made the ground shake. One of the most feared species in the known galaxy, warriors who had destroyed entire colonies, predators at the top of every food chain they encountered. Wu knew he should run. Every part of his training told him to run. Humans did not survive encounters with. They were too big, too fast, too deadly. But something made him stay. Maybe it was the way she stood. Not like a hunter ready to strike, but like a wounded animal expecting to be attacked. Her posture was defensive, not aggressive. And her eyes, those strange glowing eyes, held something that looked almost like fear. She waited for him to scream, to run, to do what every other creature in the galaxy did when they saw her kind. Instead, Wu slowly raised both of his hands, palms open, showing that he held no weapon. "I am not here to hurt you," he said. His voice was calm and steady, even though his heart was beating fast. The female froze. Her eyes widened. In all her years, across all the world she had seen, no one had ever spoken to her first. No one had ever looked at her and said words instead of screaming. She tilted her massive head, studying this small creature before her. He was tiny, fragile. She could end his life with a single movement of her claws, and yet he stood there facing her without fear in his eyes. "You are strange," she said. Her voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. "You should run, human." Wu lowered his hand slowly. "Maybe, but I crashed on this moon with nowhere else to go, and you do not look like you want to kill me." She made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a growl. "You do not know what I want." "No," Wu agreed, "but I know what fear looks like, and right now you are more afraid of me than I am of you." The words hung in the air between them. The female said nothing. She just stared at him with those violet eyes, and for a moment the cave was completely silent. Then slowly she stepped back into the shadows. "You may stay," she said quietly, "but keep your distance, human. I have not decided if you are brave or simply foolish." Wu let out a breath he did not know he was holding. "Thank you." She did not answer. She simply turned and walked deeper into the cave, her heavy footsteps echoing until they faded into silence. Wu found a spot near the cave entrance and sat down with his back against the wall. His hands were still shaking slightly. He had just survived a crash, walked across a frozen moon, and faced one of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. And somehow he was still alive. He wrapped the thermal blanket around his shoulders and stared into the darkness where she had disappeared. He did not know her name. He did not know why she was here, but something told him that this was not going to be a simple survival story. Something told him that everything was about to change. 3 days passed on Helios 4. 3 days of cold winds, gray skies, and careful silence. Wu learned to live in the cave without making trouble. He stayed near the entrance during the day, exploring only when necessary. He ate his rations slowly, making them last, and he watched the female from a distance, trying to understand her. Her name was, she had told him that much on the second day when he asked. Just a single word offered without explanation. She did not say anything else. She did not need to. Her body told its own story. She was injured. Wu noticed it on the first night, the way she moved carefully, the way she favored her lower left arm. There was a wound there, hidden beneath her armored plates, and it was not healing properly. When she walked, her steps were uneven. When she sat, she held that arm close to her body like it caused her pain. Spent most of her time deeper in the caves, away from him. She went out at night to hunt, returning with strange creatures that she ate raw. She never offered him any food, and he never asked. They existed in the same space without really being together. But Wu watched her, not because he was afraid, but because he was curious. He had spent his whole career studying alien species. He had read thousands of reports about the dangerous, violent, without mercy. Every document described them as monsters, creatures that existed only to kill and conquer. But did not act like a monster. She acted like someone who was tired, someone who had given up on expecting anything good from the universe. On the 4th night, Wu made a decision. The temperature had dropped lower than any night before. The wind screamed outside the cave entrance, and even with his thermal blanket, Wu was shivering. He forced himself to stand up and walk deeper into the cave, toward the place where stayed. He found her sitting against the far wall, her massive body curled slightly to protect herself from the cold. Her eyes were closed, but he knew she was not sleeping. Did not sleep like humans did. They rested, but they were always aware. "You should not be here," she said without opening her eyes. "I know." Wu stopped a few meters away from her. In the darkness, her armored skin seemed to absorb all light. Only her eyes glowed faintly when she finally looked at him. "Then why did you come?" Wu held up the he had been carrying. "Your arm. The wound is infected. I can smell it from across the cave. If you do not treat it, you will lose the arm, maybe worse." Made a low sound in her throat, not quite a growl, not quite a laugh. "And you think I will let a human touch me, put your little tools into my flesh?" "I think you are in pain," Wu said simply. "And I think you have been in pain for a long time. I am offering to help, that is all." She stared at him for a long moment. Her violet eyes seemed to look right through him, searching for lies or tricks or hidden plans. Wu stood still and let her look. "Why?" she finally asked. The word came out rough, almost broken. "Why would you help me? You know what my kind has done to yours. You know what we are." Wu sat down on the cold stone floor, keeping a respectful distance but showing that he was not going to leave. "I know what your species has done. I know the wars. I know the colonies that were destroyed. I lost my family in one of those attacks." His eyes widened slightly. "Then you should hate me." "Maybe." Wu opened and began laying out the supplies: bandages, antiseptic, a small injection device filled with medicine. "I did hate for a long time. I hated so much that I could not eat, could not sleep, could not think about anything except revenge." He looked up at her. "But hate did not bring my family back. It just made me empty, so I made a choice. I chose to understand instead of fear, to learn instead of destroy." Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, she extended her lower left arm toward him. The wound was worse than Wu had expected. A deep gash ran from her elbow to her wrist, and the flesh beneath her plating was swollen and dark with infection. She had tried to treat it herself, he could see, but bodies were not made for delicate medical work. Her claws were too large, her movements too rough. "This will hurt," Wu warned her. "I know pain," she replied. He worked carefully and slowly, cleaning the wound, removing the infected tissue, applying medicine. Did not make a sound, but he could feel her muscles tense beneath his hands. He could feel the effort it took for her not to pull away. "How long have you been on this moon?" he asked, trying to distract her. 2 years, maybe more. I stopped counting." "Why are you here, alone?" She was quiet for so long that Wu thought she would not answer. Then she spoke, her voice flat and hard. "I was exiled, thrown away by my own clan." Wu glanced up at her face. "Why?" "Because I refused an order." Her eyes met his. "My clan was hired to destroy a human colony, kill everyone, leave no survivors. But when I saw the prisoners they had gathered, I could not do it." "Prisoners?" "Families, children." She looked away. "I had killed before, many times, but I looked at those humans and I saw that they were not soldiers. They were just people trying to live, and I could not raise my claws against them." Wu's hand stopped moving. He stared at her. "So you refused," he said softly. "I refused, and for that my clan named me traitor. They took everything from me, my rank, my honor, my place in our society. Then they brought me here and left me to die alone." She laughed bitterly. "My people believe that mercy is weakness, that compassion is a flaw. They were right, perhaps. Look where my mercy left me. Stranded on a dead moon, rotting from wounds I cannot heal, talking to a human who should hate me." Wu finished wrapping the bandage around her arm and sat back. The wound was clean now. It would heal. "Where I come from," he said quietly, "we call that courage." looked at him sharply. Courage. You saw innocent people about to die, and you chose to save them even though you knew it would cost you everything. That is not weakness. That is the bravest thing I have ever heard. She shook her head slowly. You are a strange human. So I have been told. They sat in silence for a while. The wind outside continued to howl, but inside the cave something had changed. The distance between them felt smaller. The wall that had built around herself had cracked just a little. You should go back to your place near the entrance, she said finally. It is not safe to be this close to me. Wu stood up and gathered his, but before he turned to leave, he looked at her one more time. You are not a monster. I do not know what you believe about yourself, but I know what I see. I see someone who has been alone for too long, someone who deserves better than this. She did not respond. She just watched him with those glowing violet eyes as he walked away. But later that night, when Wu was shivering under his thermal blanket, he heard heavy footsteps approaching. He looked up to see standing over him. Without a word, she lowered herself to the ground nearby, not touching him, not speaking, but close enough that her body heat reached him through the cold air. This means nothing, she said gruffly. You will freeze to death and then I will have to move your body. It is an inconvenience. Wu smiled in the darkness. Of course. They stayed like that until morning, two unlikely survivors keeping each other warm against the endless cold. The days began to blur together on Helios 4. Time moved differently on a moon with no clocks, no schedules, no purpose except survival. Wu lost track of how long he had been there. A week. Maybe 2. It did not matter anymore. What mattered was that things were changing between him and she still kept her distance during the day. She still went out alone to hunt at night. But the walls between them were coming down piece by piece. She started leaving portions of her kills near his sleeping area, meat that he could cook over a small fire. She never said anything about it. She never admitted what she was doing. But the food appeared every morning and Wu accepted it without asking questions. In return, he tended to her wounds. The infection in her arm was healing well, but she had other injuries, old scars that had never been treated properly, cuts and burns from years of surviving alone. Her body was a map of suffering, and Wu worked to ease that suffering one wound at a time. They talked more now, small conversations at first. Simple things, the weather on the moon, the strange creatures that lived in the deeper caves, the taste of the water that dripped from the rocks, but slowly, carefully, the conversations grew deeper. One evening, as the twin suns set over the gray landscape, told him about her home. "They do not have one planet," she said. Her voice was distant, like she was speaking about someone else's life. "We move, we conquer. We take what we need and leave the rest behind. My clan traveled across 17 star systems before I was born." "That sounds lonely," Wu said. "Considered this. I never thought of it that way. It was simply our way. We did not form attachments to places or things, only to power, only to the hunt." "What about family? Did you have attachments to them?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I had a mother. She died in battle when I was young. I had brothers and sisters, but we were raised to compete against each other, to fight for position in the clan. I broke my sister's arm when I was 12 years old because she tried to take food that was mine." Wu did not know what to say. "We are not like humans," continued. "We do not love the way you do. We do not hold each other. We do not comfort. These things are seen as weakness. A who shows affection is a who will be destroyed by those around them." She turned to look at him. "That is why I do not understand you. You show me kindness. You touch me gently when you heal my wounds. You speak soft words instead of hard ones. Among my people you would be killed within an hour." Wu smiled sadly. "Among my people you would be hunted and killed on sight, but I am not my people, and I do not think you are truly your people either." Looked away. "Perhaps that is why we both ended up here." The next morning took Wu outside the cave to show him how to find water. There were underground streams that surfaced in certain places, hidden beneath layers of rock. She taught him how to recognize the signs: darker stones, certain types of moss, the faint smell of moisture in the air. As they walked, Wu noticed that she moved differently now. Her posture was less guarded. Her steps were slower, more relaxed. She still towered over him like a mountain of black armor, but somehow she seemed less frightening than before. "Can I ask you something?" Wu said. "You are going to ask whether I give permission or not." He smiled. "You are learning." Made that grinding sound that he had come to recognize as laughter. "Ask your question, human." "The colony you saved, the humans who were supposed to die, do you know what happened to them?" She stopped walking. For a moment Wu thought he had made a mistake, asked something too painful, but then she spoke, her voice heavy with memory. "I do not know for certain. When I refused the order, there was confusion, fighting. The other warriors tried to stop me and I had to fight my way out. During the chaos, the prisoners escaped, some of them at least." She looked up at the dark sky. "I like to believe they made it somewhere safe. I like to believe that my choice meant something, but I will never know. That is part of my punishment, to wonder forever whether my sacrifice was worth anything at all." Wu stepped closer to her. He had to crane his neck back to look at her face. "It was worth something," he said firmly. "Even if only one person escaped because of what you did, it was worth it. Even if they never know your name, even if no one ever thanks you, you gave them a chance to live. That matters." Looked down at him. Her violet eyes were soft, vulnerable in a way he had never seen before. "My people would say that you are weak for believing such things." "And what do you say?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she reached out with one of her massive hands and touched the side of his face. Her claws were deadly sharp, capable of cutting through steel, but she touched him with impossible gentleness. "I say that I do not understand you," she said quietly, "but I am beginning to think that perhaps I want to." They stood like that for a moment, two beings from different worlds, connected by something neither of them could name. Then pulled her hand back and turned away. "Come, there is more I need to show you." The rest of the day was spent learning survival skills. Taught Wu which cave creatures were safe to eat and which ones were poisonous. She showed him how to build shelter from the sharp winds that swept across the moon's surface. She demonstrated how to fight if he had to, using his small size and speed against larger enemies. "You will never be strong like a," she told him. "But you do not need to be. Strength is not the only way to win. Sometimes the warrior is the one who survives." Wu practiced with his plasma cutter, making clumsy strikes against imaginary enemies. Watched with something that might have been amusement. "You are terrible at this," she said. "I know. You hold the weapon like it is a writing tool." "I was a scientist before I crashed here. Writing tools are what I know." Shook her head slowly. "And yet you stayed when you saw me. You did not run. A scientist who does not run from monsters." "You are not a monster," Wu said. He had said it before, but he wanted her to hear it again. Was silent for a long time. Then very softly, she said something that Wu almost missed. "You are the first person who has ever said that to me." That night, they sat together at the cave entrance and watched the stars, pointed out constellations that they used for navigation. Wu told her about Earth's night sky, about the patterns his ancestors had given names to thousands of years ago. "Do you miss your home?" asked. "Sometimes," Wu admitted. "But home is not just a place. Home is where you feel like you belong, and I stopped belonging anywhere after my family died." "Then where is your home now?" Wu thought about the question carefully. He looked at the strange stars above him. He looked at the gray rocks beneath him. He looked at the massive alien warrior sitting beside him. "I do not know yet," he said, "but I am starting to think it might be closer than I expected." Did not respond. But when Wu shivered from the cold, she moved a little closer to him. And when he leaned against her armored side, she did not pull away. For the first time since crashing on Helios 4, Wu felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The storm came without warning. One moment, the sky was its usual dark purple. The next moment, the horizon turned black. A wall of dust and wind rose up from the far end of the moon and began racing toward them with terrifying speed. Saw it first. She grabbed Wu with two of her arms and pulled him back into the cave before he even understood what was happening. "Deep," she said. "We need to go deep now." They ran through the cave system, moving faster than Wu had ever moved before. Half carried him when his legs could not keep up. The sound of the storm grew louder behind them, a roaring scream that filled the tunnels with echoing noise. They reached the deepest part of the caves just as the storm hit. The entrance disappeared behind a wall of swirling dust. The wind howled through the tunnels like a wounded animal. Even this far inside, Wu could feel the pressure changing, the air growing thick and heavy. "How long?" he asked, gasping for breath. "Days," said she. Was not even breathing hard. 3 days, maybe more. These storms can last a week." Wu looked around the small chamber they had reached. It was barely large enough for both of them. The walls were close, the ceiling low even for him. Had to curl her massive body into itself just to fit. "I should have paid more attention to the sky," she said. There was frustration in her voice. "I know the signs. I was distracted." "By what?" She did not answer, but she looked at him in a way that made the answer clear. They settled into the small space as best they could. Wu had his thermal blanket, had her own body heat. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but here in the deep darkness, they were safe. Safe but trapped together. The first day passed slowly. They sat in silence mostly, conserving energy. Wu slept when he could. Stayed awake, watching the entrance to the chamber as if expecting enemies to appear from the storm. On the second day, they began to talk. It started with small things again. Stories from Wu's childhood, memories of his training as the different alien species he had studied before coming to this region of space. But as the hours crawled by, the conversation turned to darker subjects. "Tell me about your family," said. Her voice echoed strangely in the small chamber. "The ones you lost." Wu was quiet for a long moment. He had not talked about them in years. He had buried those memories deep inside himself, locked them away where they could not hurt him. But sitting here in the darkness, with the storm screaming outside and death so close, the words came easier than he expected. "My father was a teacher," he said. "Mathematics. He used to say that numbers were the only truly universal language. Every species in the galaxy understood numbers." "And your mother?" "She was a doctor. She worked in a small clinic on our colony. She spent most of her days treating miners who got injured in the tunnels. She always came home exhausted, but she never complained." "Did you have siblings?" Wu felt his throat tighten. "A sister, Hana. She was 4 years younger than me. She wanted to be an explorer. She had this book of star maps and she would spend hours looking at it, planning all the places she would visit when she grew up." He stopped. The memories were sharp now, cutting into him like knives. "What happened?" asked softly. "Raiders hit our colony when I was 19. They came without warning, just like this storm. My father was killed trying to protect the school. My mother died in the clinic when they burned it down. And Hana." He could not continue. The words stuck in his throat. Said nothing. She simply waited in the darkness, giving him time. "I was not there," Wu finally said. "I was on a field trip with my university, learning about alien plant species on a moon 3 systems away. I found out about the attack 2 days after it happened. By then, there was nothing left, just ashes and ruins and a list of names." "I am sorry," said. The words sounded strange coming from her, like she had never said them before. For years, I hated your kind, Wu admitted. I hated every in the galaxy. I wanted them all to die. I dreamed about finding the raiders who destroyed my home and killing them with my own hands. He laughed bitterly. But I was a scientist, not a soldier. I could not fight. I could not take revenge. All I could do was study and learn and try to understand. And did understanding help? Eventually, I realized that hatred was not hurting anyone except myself. The raiders who killed my family did not care that I hated them. They probably never thought about my colony again, but I thought about them every single day. I let them live inside my head, controlling me even from far away. He turned to face her in the darkness. He could barely see her, just the faint glow of her eyes. So I made a choice. I chose to stop letting hatred define me. I chose to see each person, each being, as an individual instead of a member of a species. I chose to believe that understanding was more powerful than destruction. Even after everything that was taken from you. Especially after everything. Because if I let that tragedy turn me into someone who spreads more hate, more violence, more pain, then the raiders won. They did not just kill my family. They killed who I could have been. Was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I have killed many beings. Hundreds, maybe thousands, I never counted. They were enemies, targets, obstacles. I never thought about their families, their dreams, their lives. She made a sound that might have been a sob, though Wu had never heard a cry. When I saw those human prisoners, I looked into their eyes and I saw myself reflected back. I saw what I truly was, a monster, a destroyer, something that existed only to cause pain. You should hate me, she said, her voice cracked. You should want me dead. I am no different from the raiders who killed your family. I have done the same things, worse things. I do not deserve your kindness. She was trembling. Her massive body shook with emotions she had kept locked away for years, decades, her entire life. The armor that protected her body could not protect her heart. Wu moved without thinking. He crossed the small distance between them and wrapped his arms around her as much as he could. His hands could barely reach across her chest. His body was tiny against hers, but he held her anyway. She froze, her whole body went rigid. "What are you doing?" she gasped. "It is called an embrace," Wu said quietly. "Where I come from, we do this when someone is in pain. We hold them. We let them know they are not alone. I could kill you. I could crush you without even trying. I know. This is weakness. This is everything my people taught me to despise. I know that too." Her body was still trembling. He could feel her heart's beating beneath her armored chest. Two hearts, both racing with fear and confusion and something else. Something she did not have a name for. "Why?" she asked. The word came out broken. "Why would you do this?" Wu held her. "Because you deserve to know what it feels like. To be held. To be comforted. To be told that you are more than the worst things you have done." She expected him to run. She expected him to cower in fear or attack her in hatred. She expected everything she had ever known. Instead, he offered his embrace. And in that moment, something inside shattered. The walls she had built around her heart, the armor she wore on her soul, the cold emptiness that had protected her for so long. It all broke apart. She cried. For the first time in her entire life, she cried. Her 4 arms wrapped around him gently, so gently like she was afraid he would break. She pulled him close and let the tears flow. She cried for the beings she had killed. She cried for the life she had lost. She cried for the monster she had been and the exile she had become. And through it all, Wu held her. The storm raged outside for another day. But inside that small chamber, something new was being born. Something that felt like the beginning of healing. The storm ended on the 3rd day. The winds died down. The dust settled. And when Wu and finally made their way back to the main cave chamber, the world outside looked almost peaceful again. But the peace did not last. Noticed it first, a change in the air, a distant sound that did not belong to the moon's natural rhythm. She stopped walking and tilted her head, her violet eyes narrowing. "What is it?" Wu asked. "A ship," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled, but he could see the tension in her body. "A ship." Wu felt his stomach drop. "Rescue." "No." She turned to face him, and the look in her eyes made his blood run cold. "Hunters." She explained quickly, her words sharp and urgent. They had traditions that went back thousands of years. When someone was exiled, they were considered dead to the clan. But if that exile survived too long, if they showed they were strong enough to endure, then a hunting party would be sent to finish the job. It was a matter of honor. A traitor who lived was a stain on the clan. The only way to clean that stain was with blood. "I knew this day would come," said. "I just did not expect it so soon." "How many?" "5, maybe 6. Standard hunting party." She looked toward the cave entrance. "They will track my signal. They have equipment that can find a heartbeat from kilometers away. There is no hiding." Wu's mind raced. He thought about the crashed shuttle, the broken communication array, the plasma cutter that was his only weapon. None of it would help against a hunting party. "What do we do?" he asked. Wu shook her head. "No, you will hide deep in the caves where they cannot find you. I will lead them away, buy you time." "Time for what? Even if they do not find me, I will die on this moon without you." "You might survive. You have learned much. And if a ship came once, another might come." "That is not good enough." Wu stepped closer to her. "I am not going to hide while you fight alone." His eyes widened. "You do not understand what you are saying. These are warriors, trained killers. You are one small human with a cutting tool. They will tear you apart. Then they will tear me apart standing next to you. This is not your fight." "Yes, it is." Wu grabbed her hand, his small fingers wrapping around one of her massive claws. "You saved innocent lives when you refused that order. You chose mercy when your whole world told you to be cruel. That makes you worth fighting for." "I am not worth dying for." "That is my choice to make, not yours." They stared at each other in the dim light of the cave. His expression shifted through a dozen emotions: confusion, fear, anger, and beneath it all, something that looked almost like wonder. "You are insane," she finally said. "Probably. This will end badly." "Maybe, but at least it will end with us together." Closed her eyes. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but it was smaller now, pushed aside by something stronger. "Very well," she said. "If you are determined to die at my side, then we will make them work for it." They spent the next hours preparing, showed Wu the best defensive positions in the cave. She taught him how warriors fought, their patterns and weaknesses. She explained that their armored plates were thickest on their chests and backs, but thinner around the joints. "Aim for the knees," she told him. "The shoulders, the neck if you can reach it. A plasma cutter will not kill them, but it will hurt them, and pain can slow anyone down." "What about you?" "I will do what I was trained to do." She flexed her forearms, her claws extending to their full length. "I will fight." As night fell over Helios 4, they saw the ship descending through the dark sky. It was black and angular, designed for war. Landing lights cut through the darkness as it settled onto the rocky plain about a kilometer from the caves. Wu watched through a crack in the cave wall. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. This was really happening. In a few hours, maybe less, he would be fighting for his life against some of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy. "Scared?" asked from behind him. "Terrified." "Good, fear keeps you alive. It is when you stop being afraid that you make mistakes." She moved to stand beside him, her massive form blocking out the faint starlight. Together, they watched the figures emerge from the ship. 5 warriors, their armored bodies catching the glow of the distant suns. They spread out immediately, forming a search pattern. "The leader is the one in front," said. "I recognize the markings. His name is, we trained together when we were young." "A friend." "There are no friends among, only rivals and enemies." She paused, but he was less cruel than some. He did not enjoy causing pain the way others did. "Will that help us?" "No, he will still try to kill me. It is his duty, and always does his duty." The hunters disappeared into the rocky landscape, moving toward the cliffs. They would reach the caves within an hour, maybe sooner if they moved fast. "One more time," said, turning to face Wu. "Hide, let me face them. There is no shame in survival." "No. You stubborn human." "Yes." She made that grinding sound again, but this time it sounded almost fond. "Then stand behind me when they come. Stay close. Use your small size to stay out of their reach, and if I fall," she hesitated. "If I fall, run. Do not try to save me. Do not try to fight them alone. Just run and do not look back." "I cannot promise that." "I know, but I had to say it." They moved to the main chamber of the cave, the largest open space. Positioned herself at the center, facing the entrance. Wu stood behind her, the plasma cutter gripped tightly in his hands. The wait was the hardest part. Minutes stretched into eternities. Every sound made Wu's muscles tense. Every shadow seemed to move. Then finally they came. Entered first. He was almost as large as, his armor marked with symbols of rank and honor. His violet eyes swept the chamber and found immediately. "So," he said, his voice echoed off the walls, "the exile still breathes." His voice was steady. "It has been a long time." "Too long. The clan grows tired of waiting for you to die." He looked around the chamber and his eyes fell on Wu. "And what is this? A pet?" The other hunters entered behind him, spreading out to block any escape. 5 against 2. The odds were impossible. "He is not a pet," said. "He is under my protection." Laughed, the sound was harsh and ugly. "Protection? You protect humans now. The traitor has truly lost her mind." "I lost many things, but not my mind." "It does not matter," raised his claws. "Your death was ordered 2 years ago. I am here to fulfill that order. The human will die too. He made that choice when he stood beside you." Wu stepped forward, moving out from behind. The hunters watched him with amusement, this tiny creature holding a tool as if it were a weapon. "She saved human lives," Wu said. His voice did not shake. "She showed mercy when your clan showed none. That is not weakness. That is what separates warriors from murderers." Tilted his head. "It speaks how charming." "I speak because someone needs to say the truth. You call her a traitor, but she was the only one among you with honor. The only one who understood that strength without compassion is just cruelty." The chamber fell silent. Even the other hunters seemed surprised that a human would speak to them this way. His eyes narrowed. "You have courage, little creature. I will give you a quick death, a mercy you do not deserve." He lunged forward. And the battle began, moved faster than Wu could follow. One moment he was standing at the cave entrance. The next moment he was in the air, claws extended, aiming for his throat. But was ready. She caught his strike with 2 of her arms and used the other 2 to counterattack. Her claws raked across his shoulder, sparks flying where they scraped against his armor. Twisted away and landed in a crouch, his eyes burning with surprise. "You have not grown weak," he admitted. "I have had 2 years to think about this moment," replied. The other hunters attacked as one. They came from all sides, trying to overwhelm with numbers. The cave filled with the sound of claws on armor, grunts of effort, and the heavy crash of bodies slamming into stone. Wu had never seen anything like it. The violence was incredible, terrifying, beautiful in its own savage way. Moved like water, flowing between attacks, striking wherever she found an opening. But she was 1 against 5, and even her skill had limits. One of the hunters broke away from the main fight and turned toward Wu. He was smaller than, but still nearly 3 meters tall. His eyes glowed with contempt as he approached. "Little human," the hunter said, "time to die." Wu raised his plasma cutter. The blade hummed with energy. It felt pathetic in his hands, like a match against a bonfire. The hunter laughed and lunged. Wu did not try to block. He could not match strength against strength. Instead, he did something the hunter did not expect. He dropped to the ground. The hunter's claws swept through empty air where Wu's head had been. Before the massive creature could recover, Wu rolled between his legs and slashed at the back of his knee. The plasma cutter burned through the thinner armor, cutting into the flesh beneath. The hunter roared in pain and stumbled. His leg buckled under him, and he crashed to one knee. Wu did not wait. He scrambled up and ran, putting distance between himself and the wounded hunter. His heart was racing. His hands were shaking, but he was alive. "Lucky," the hunter snarled, pulling himself back to his feet. His leg was smoking where the plasma had burned it. "That will not happen again." He charged, and Wu dodged again. But this time the hunter was ready. One of his 4 arms swept low, catching Wu across the chest and sending him flying into the cave wall. Pain exploded through Wu's body. He hit the stone hard enough to crack rock. For a moment, everything went white. When his vision cleared, the hunter was standing over him, claws raised for the killing blow. "Any last words, human?" Wu looked up at him. Blood was running down his face from a cut on his forehead. His chest felt like fire, but he managed to smile. "Yes," he said, "behind you." The hunter started to turn, but he was too slow. Crashed into him from the side, all 4 of her arms wrapped around his body. They tumbled across the cave floor, tearing at each other with savage fury. When they finally broke apart, the hunter did not get up again. Wu was at his side in an instant. Her violet eyes swept over his injuries, and her expression twisted with something that looked like fear. "You are hurt." "I noticed." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a cough. "How many left?" "3, including." As if summoned by his name, stepped forward from the shadows. The other 2 hunters flanked him. All of them were wounded now, bleeding from cuts and gashes, but they were still standing. "Enough games," said. His voice was cold. "This ends now." He gestured to the other hunters. "Hold the human. I will deal with the exile myself." Stood between them and Wu. "You will not touch him. You cannot protect him forever. Look at yourself. You are exhausted, wounded. You have fought well, but this is over. Then come and end it." Smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "As you wish." The 3 of them attacked together. The 2 hunters went for Wu while faced directly. It was the same strategy as before, but now everyone was tired, everyone was hurt, and mistakes were more likely to be fatal. Wu grabbed a loose rock from the ground and threw it at one of the approaching hunters. It bounced harmlessly off his armor, but it distracted him for a moment, long enough for Wu to scramble behind a boulder. "You cannot hide forever," one of the hunters called out. "I do not need forever, just long enough." He peeked around the boulder and saw and locked in combat. They were evenly matched. Every strike was met with a counterstrike. Every attack was blocked or deflected. They moved around each other in a deadly dance that had been practiced for generations. But was fresher. He had let his warriors do most of the fighting while he waited, and had already defeated 2 of them. The exhaustion was showing in her movements, the slight delays, the steps that came a fraction too slow. She was losing. Wu looked at the 2 hunters searching for him. They were spreading out, trying to corner him against the cave wall. In a few seconds they would find him, and then it would be over. He made a decision. "Hey," he shouted, stepping out from behind the boulder. "Over here." Both hunters turned toward him. He raised his plasma cutter and charged straight at them. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was exactly what they did not expect. Wu ducked under the first hunter's swipe and jammed the plasma cutter into the joint of his shoulder. The hunter screamed and dropped one of his arms, which hung useless at his side. Wu did not stop. He kept running, sliding between the hunter's legs again, and burst out the other side. The second hunter was waiting for him. A massive arm caught him around the waist and lifted him off the ground. Claws pressed against his throat. "Now you die," the hunter growled. "Now you let him go," his voice cut through the cave. Everyone stopped, even stood behind with her claws at his throat. She had used Wu's distraction to gain the advantage. One wrong move and would be dead. "Release the human," said, "or your leader dies." The hunter holding Wu hesitated. He looked at, waiting for orders. His eyes were calm, almost amused. "You would kill me after everything. I have already lost my honor, my clan, and my home. What is one more death? If you kill me, my warriors will tear the human apart before you can stop them. Then we all die. Is that what you want?" Silence filled the cave. The only sounds were heavy breathing and the drip of blood on stone. Then laughed. "You have changed," he said. "The I knew would never have risked everything for a single human. The you knew was miserable and empty. This human showed me something different." "What?" "That there is more to life than duty and death." She pressed her claws closer to his throat. "Now tell your warrior to release him." Considered his options. Then slowly he nodded. "Let him go." The hunter dropped Wu, who fell to the ground, gasping for breath. His whole body ached. He could barely move. Stepped away from his claws and turned to face her. His expression was unreadable. "You have won this fight," he said. "But what now? You cannot let us go. We will return. More hunters will come. This will never end." "Then tell them what you saw here today," said. "Tell them that the exile is not alone. Tell them that she has found something worth fighting for. And tell them that anyone who comes for us will find the same fate waiting." Studied her for a long moment. Then his eyes moved to Wu, who had managed to pull himself to a sitting position against the cave wall. "He fought like he had nothing to lose," said quietly. "I have never seen a human do that. He is not like other humans, and I am not like other. Perhaps that means something." Turned and walked toward the cave entrance. The two surviving hunters followed him, carrying their wounded companion. At the entrance, stopped and looked back. "I will tell them what I saw," he said, "but I make no promises about what they will decide. That is all I ask." He nodded once and disappeared into the darkness. A few minutes later, Wu heard the distant roar of a ship lifting off, growing fainter until it vanished into silence. Collapsed beside him, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Her armor was cracked in a dozen places. Blood seeped from wounds all over her body. "That was stupid," she said. "Which part?" "All of it, charging at them, distracting them, risking your life for me." Wu leaned his head back against the cave wall. "Did it work?" "Yes." "Then it was not stupid, it was strategy." Made that grinding sound. Even now, even bleeding and broken, she could laugh. "What happens now?" Wu asked. "I do not know. We are both alive. That is more than I expected." She turned her head to look at him. Her violet eyes were soft, filled with emotions that he was only beginning to understand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For fighting, for staying, for being the most stubborn, foolish, brave creature I have ever met." Wu smiled through the pain. "You are welcome." They sat together in the silence of the cave, two broken warriors who had somehow survived the impossible. And outside, the stars continued to shine over Helios 4, cold and beautiful and full of promise. Recovery was slow. Wu had 3 broken ribs, a cracked collarbone, and more bruises than he could count. Was in even worse shape. Her armor was damaged in ways that would take months to heal, and she had lost enough blood to kill most creatures twice over. But they were alive, and that was enough. The days after the battle blurred together. They slept and ate and tended to each other's wounds, taught Wu how to apply healing paste to her damaged plates. Wu showed her how to wrap human bandages around his chest without squeezing too tight. They talked about everything and nothing, stories from their pasts, dreams they had given up on, fears they had never spoken aloud before. In that small cave on a forgotten moon, they learned each other completely. It was during one of these conversations that Wu had an idea. "The ship," he said suddenly. Looked at him with confusion. "What ship?" "The hunter ship. Ship. When they attacked, I saw where they landed, and when they left, I heard them fly north." "I do not understand." "They came to kill you, but they did not succeed, and I doubt they cleaned up after themselves." Wu's eyes were bright with excitement. There might be parts left behind, equipment, maybe even a communication array. Understanding dawned on his face. "You want to build a beacon." "I want to call for help, real help, a ship that can take us both off this moon." "And where would we go? No world in the galaxy would accept an exile." Wu reached out and took her massive hand in both of his. "Then we will find one that does, or we will keep moving until we do, but we will do it together." Stared at him. Then slowly, the corners of her mouth curved upward. It was the closest thing to a smile he had ever seen on her face. "You are still insane," she said. "Yes, but now I am your insane." They waited until they were strong enough to walk. Then they made the journey across the rocky plain to where the hunter ship had landed. Just as Wu had hoped, the hunters had left debris behind. Damaged equipment, discarded supplies, and most importantly, a backup communication relay that had been thrown aside when they took off in a hurry. It took Wu 3 days to repair it. His hands were not made for this kind of delicate work, but he had learned patience during his years as a scientist. Watched him work, occasionally handing him tools or holding pieces in place with her massive claws. When the beacon finally activated, sending its signal out into the void of space, they both held their breath. The response came 2 days later. It was a merchant vessel, a trading ship that had picked up their signal while passing through the system. The captain's voice crackled through the communicator, confused and suspicious. "Unknown signal, identify yourself. This is the freighter Wandering Star. What is your situation?" Wu answered carefully. "This is Han Wu Research. My shuttle crashed on Helios 4 several weeks ago. I have a companion with me. We need transport off this moon." "A companion? What kind of companion?" Wu looked at. She nodded slowly. "Oh," he said, "an exile. She is with me voluntarily and she is not a threat." The line went silent for a long moment. Wu could imagine the captain arguing with his crew, trying to decide whether to help or flee. Finally the voice returned. "We can send a shuttle, but if there is any trouble we leave. Understood?" "Understood, thank you." The shuttle arrived the next morning. It was a small transport, piloted by a nervous-looking human with gray hair and suspicious eyes. When he saw standing beside Wu, his hand moved toward the weapon at his belt. "She stays outside," the pilot said. Wu stepped forward. "No, she comes with me, or I do not come at all." "You expect me to let on my ship? Those things killed my brother at the colonies." "I am sorry for your loss, but she is not like the others. She saved human lives. She was exiled by her own people because she refused to kill innocent people." The pilot laughed bitterly. "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to look at us." Wu gestured to himself, "and we are both wounded. We are both exhausted. If she wanted to kill you, she would have done it already. Instead, she is standing here, waiting for permission to board your ship. Does that sound like a monster to you?" The pilot hesitated. His eyes moved from Wu to and back again. Something in his expression shifted. "If she makes one wrong move," he said finally, "I will space both of you." "Fair enough." The trip to the main ship was tense. The pilot kept his weapon drawn the entire time, his eyes never leaving. But she did not react. She sat quietly in the corner, making herself as small as possible, and let the humans have their space. When they boarded the wandering star, the crew was waiting in the cargo bay. A dozen men and women, all armed, all watching with fear and hatred in their eyes. The captain stepped forward. She was an older woman with short silver hair and a scar across her left cheek. "So you are the scientist," she said to Wu, "and this is your..." "Her name is, and she is not my anything. She is her own person." The captain raised an eyebrow. Person, an interesting word to use for a species that has killed millions. "With respect, Captain, humans have killed millions too. We do not define your entire species by your worst members. Why should we do that to hers?" The cargo bay fell silent. The crew exchanged glances, uncertain and uncomfortable. Then, to everyone's surprise, the captain laughed. "You have courage, scientist, I will give you that." She turned to look at, "What do you have to say for yourself?" Stepped forward. The crew raised their weapons, but she stopped at a respectful distance. "I know what my people have done," she said. Her voice was deep and calm. "I know the pain we have caused. I cannot change the past, but I can choose what I do now. And I choose to stand with this human. I choose to be more than what I was born to be." The captain studied her for a long moment, then she nodded. "Welcome aboard the Wandering Star. You will stay in the cargo bay for now. We will figure out what to do with you later." It was not a warm welcome, but it was a beginning. Word spread across the frontier in the weeks that followed. A human scientist and an exile traveling together. Some called it madness. Others called it a miracle, but everyone talked about it. Was offered asylum on a neutral station at the edge of known space. A place where outcasts and refugees gathered, where questions were not asked and pasts were not examined. She could start over there, build a new life, finally be free from the shadow of her exile. But when Wu prepared to return to his research vessel, she made a different choice. "I am coming with you," she said. Wu blinked in surprise. "What?" "Your ship studies alien species, learns about them, tries to understand them." She looked at him with those soft violet eyes. "Perhaps they could use a perspective. The crew might not accept you." "They might not, but you will, and that is enough." Wu smiled. It was the kind of smile that transformed his face, that made him look younger and brighter than he had in years. "Then welcome to the team." They transferred to the research vessel Horizon's Edge 2 weeks later. The crew was nervous at first, just like the merchants had been, but was patient. She answered questions. She shared knowledge. She showed them that not all were monsters. Slowly, carefully, she earned their trust. On their first night aboard the Horizon's Edge, Wu found in the observation deck. She was standing before the great window, staring out at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything," she said. "My clan, my exile, the moon, you." "Good thoughts or bad thoughts?" She turned to look at him. The starlight reflected in her violet eyes, making them shine like gems. "I still do not understand humans," she admitted. "You are small and fragile and you die so easily, but you love so fiercely. You fight for things that logic says you cannot win. You hope even when hope makes no sense. Is that a bad thing?" "No." She reached down with one of her massive hands and took his gently, carefully, like she was holding something precious. "It is the most wonderful thing I have ever seen." Wu squeezed her hand. "We have a long journey ahead of us. There will be challenges, people who do not understand, problems we cannot predict." "I know. But we will face them together." Nodded together. They stood like that for a long time, the human and watching the stars drift past the window. Two beings from different worlds, brought together by chance and held together by choice. Behind them, the universe stretched on forever, dangerous and beautiful and full of mysteries. But for the first time in either of their lives, Neither of them was afraid. They had found something that fear could not touch. They had found each other. And that was enough.